completely agree.
Let's shift gears, Jeff. We're going to end with talking about Knoxville, and then we'll also hit on your Tigers, and we'll jump into the chat after that. So last week we started talking about how Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee, or whatever you want to call his last name, how he essentially missed the Friday practice. Then Coach Josh Heupel came out and said he's off the team. Well, later on after the podcast, it was rumored that I'm based in LA. A lot of my coworkers that are UCLA fans, they see a big UT like poster next to my desk. And they're like, hey, what do we need to know about this guy or whatever? So, everybody in SoCal's pumped up. They think they have the next greatest thing at quarterback. But from just a specific, let's just talk about what Nico did, okay? He went from making over $2 million in a state with no income tax in Tennessee, an SEC school who, if he stayed and took a leap, this year, would probably make the playoffs in a 12-team format again. I don't think that's anything crazy, and he could have probably redeemed himself if he had a postseason run. Perhaps he could have worked himself into an early day 2, late day 1 type of guy in 2026. However, now he's in UCLA. Their program is absolutely garbage. Their offensive coordinator, I don't think, has called a play in college football yet. So he's going to a very inexperienced team. Not only that, but if you're thinking that he has financial benefits there, he's making less gross than what he was in Knoxville. So he's making $1.5 million in UCLA. By the way, I live in LA. Cost of living here compared to Knoxville, I don't care what sites tell you, especially Brentwood, Santa Monica, those are the most expensive parts of LA. You're looking at, I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than double. And I saw some people saying, why wouldn't you want to live in LA? Let me tell you, as an LA native, this freaking place has gone to absolute shit. Everything's dirty. We have potholes everywhere, homeless everywhere. Knoxville is one of the most, and I guess I'm kind of biased, but it's one of the most beautiful places in this freaking country, man. Super clean. People there are so friendly. I don't care. If it wasn't for my family and my friends out here, Knoxville 10 out of 10. But I'm more, I lean more, I like the South more than I do here. You guys can tell probably from the way I'm talking about it. But Jeff, bottom line, is this a colossal mistake on Nico's part?
So it's not a colossal mistake on his part. He had nothing to do with this, right? He was the pawn in all of this. His dad, and let's remember, his dad screwed over UCLA once already, right? Let's remember, younger brother was committed to UCLA and on signing day flipped to Arkansas, of all places, right? Dad doesn't view his two sons as sons. He views them as like his golden goose, his golden geese, right? And I think he thinks his sons' talents are far greater than they actually are. Are they talented? Of course they are. Are they? I said this to my best friend the other day, and I was like, can we start a list of guys who are supposed to be better than Trevor Lawrence and aren't? Right? Coming out of high school, Nico was supposed to be better than Trevor Lawrence. He's not. Even entering year 3, he's not even close to what Trevor was as a freshman. Quinn Ewers was the year after, a year or two after Trevor, is literally listed as the greatest high school recruit of all time. His college career never amounted to what Trevor accomplished in one. There's a list of other guys who were supposed to be better, equal to or better than Trevor, and none of them have lived up to that. And I'm not saying that as a Clemson guy. I'm saying that as a guy with eyeballs who realized how elite Trevor was as a college football player. And so for me, it's not even about Nico. It's about his dad and that inner circle that he's being forced to keep. Because I think if you go up to Nico, everybody talks about what a great kid he is, right? Even people in Knoxville, they don't hate Nico. They would have taken him back with open arms. They didn't want dad around anymore. And I think Heupel just got to a point where he was tired of dealing with dad, right? He was tired of dealing with dad and dad's cronies, talking shit all over Twitter and all over social media and doing their thing and trying to hijack trying to make demands. And, they talked about how the offensive line wasn't very good and that needed to be better, and how the offense wasn't, suited to for Nico, and how, they needed more money because of all of this, because it was, making him look bad. Sir, I don't know if you know this, but UCLA's got one of the worst offensive lines in football. And their offensive coordinator has never called a fucking play in his life.
One person in the chat, Jeff, mentioned that in the Big Ten, UCLA ranked 16th in sacks allowed. So if you thought the UT line was bad, you don't even know what's about to come at UCLA. November 15th, they're going to be playing at Ohio State. So let's see what Nico does when he returns back to
What happened the first time they played? What happened the first time they played, right?
Throw that game in there. Throw Georgia in there. Throw Bama in there. He has one total touchdown across those 3 games. And you brought up the stat last week. I think he had 9 total touchdowns against SEC teams, but was it 4 or 5 of them came against Vandy? This is the part, and now we're going to shift to Clemson. This is the part of the college football, NIL transfer portal that really needs to be fixed, because somebody like Nico, who had potential, and had he stayed in Knoxville year 2 to year 3, maybe, you never know, these kids could take a nice leap. But now you sacrificed Knoxville for Hollywood, and it might not work out in your favor long term. Sure, you're gonna have endorsements and stuff in LA. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, but also you go from possibly being the second biggest star in Tennessee next to Jean Morant to being an afterthought in LA. LeBron, Ohtani, Luka, Kawhi. USC football is better. UCLA basketball dwarfs UCLA football. It's not even close. You are at the bottom of the bottom.
UCLA softball dwarfs UCLA football.
It's not a serious program. It's just you go from a place where football is everything. And go listen to Theo Vaughn's interview with Lane Kiffin. Knoxville, Tennessee, these people live and die for that. Is the only, aside from the Knoxville Smokies, which is the minor league team of the Cubs, there's really nothing else to do there. They live for UT football. So you go from a place like that where you're basically
Dollywood.
king.
Come on, man, stop hating.
Hey man, Bollywood went from Bollywood to Hollywood.
Look, I think the biggest mistake though was the money part of this. At 1.5 million, he's going to bring home roughly $750,000-$800,000 after everything is said and done. Where you were going to bring home more than 2 million. And look, I'm a SoCal guy, right? I would never move to LA, but San Diego's home. And it's expensive as shit out there. I'll tell you what, the Rose Bowl is one of the greatest stadiums I've ever been to. I would go back to the Rose Bowl every year if I could afford to go out there just to go to the game. It's an amazing experience, and be able to call that place home for at least a year and play 5 or 6, 7 games in that place, good for him. But as far as being able to develop as a quarterback, Dad missed the bar with this one. I don't think he's going to get the coaching, the development. And say what you want about Tennessee. Sorry, I hate the fan base. They are just a bunch of assholes. Probably the worst fan base on Twitter, if I'm being honest. And it's worse than South Carolina. It's worse than Ohio State. They are just ruthless on Twitter. But they bleed orange. If that's what you want to call it. I don't know if I really want to call that orange, but they bleed whatever that orange color is supposed to be.
Blood orange.
And yeah. And it's more like prison cone orange. But say what you want about Heupel. He's gotten 2 guys to the NFL that probably wouldn't have gotten there. And sure, they're not starters, but they're on NFL rosters. And when you look at what Nico is going to go through this year, he's going to go through growing pains because it's an offense he doesn't know. It's with a coordinator who's never called plays, worst offensive line, doesn't have the weapons that he had in Tennessee, and he damn sure doesn't have the fucking defense that he had in Tennessee. Right? And all of that, when they go 2-10 on the year, who's going to get the blame? It's going to be Nico. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's going to be Nico. And his dad can't help, but his dad's going to shove those big-ass feet in his mouth, and it's going to be really bad for him. And by the way, NFL teams are paying attention to this bullshit. NFL teams are not going to want to deal with a father like that. Say what you like. There were NBA teams that don't want to deal with Lonzo Ball, or any of the Ball brothers because of their dad, right? Like, yes, they've all made some decent money, but you look at the middle one. Look at Jello. He can't get on an NBA team, and he's probably good enough, if we're being honest, because they don't want to deal with dad. The other two are just so immensely talented that they don't really have a choice. But you look at the guy who's probably good enough to be the 10th man on a bench. He can't get the opportunity because nobody wants to deal with dad. And Daddy Ball looks a lot better than Nico's dad. Nico's dad is fucking ridiculous. And again, I can't say what I want to. He's absolutely ridiculous, and he doesn't realize his antics are costing his kids opportunities at the highest level.
There's your new R word, Jeff. Ridiculous. But going back, I mean, you're talking about how NFL teams are taking notes. Ashton Genty probably had every single offer in the world to go play for Georgia, Bama. But what did he do? He stuck at Boise State. And I think that speaks volumes. And that's probably when you're talking about leadership qualities, like I'm going to go down with my guys like that. If he gets picked in the top 10, which I'm pretty sure he will, he could even go as high as 5 to Jacksonville. I think him sticking at Boise State would work in his favor and implicitly lead to more money.